Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall. We're going to take a look at the Alderney Journal, following Robert's recent appointment as chairman, and then we're going to take a look at local matters and also what's happening in the rest of the world. Robert, as ever, good to see you.
And
And
you, Tony.
can I say it's the first time I've interviewed a press baron?
Well, well, I don't have the trappings that went with Lord Beaverbrook or Victor Matthews, but
Not even Maxwell or Murdoch.
no, no, but definitely not, definitely not. But thank you for the accolade.
Well, there we are. You've got to take on these titles as they're handed out to you. Brief history of the journal. When did it start?
Yes, this journal started just over 40 years ago, but there were predecessor journals, if I could put them under different names. And in fact, one of the most interesting is just pre-war. And when I wrote a column for the journal last week, I referenced it because someone wrote in June 1939 that in the Alderney Journal said that there wasn't going to be a war.
Who was that? Chamberlain?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, yes, I think he was after Ride, but it was some local, but there were So it follows a number. I mean, I personally, and you may be surprised, I'm personally disappointed that the Ordinary Press doesn't exist, actually, because I thought it was good. It was produced in a different way, but and in some ways more contentious, and it's just a shame that doesn't exist as well, because I'm afraid, in absence of any scrutiny committees in the States, the journal, it seems to be the only organ with which to scrutinize the States. So I don't think that's good. I don't think that's right, but that's the situation we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the current circulation, Robert?
Okay, current circulation, there are fixed subscriptions of about 190, say between 190 and 200, and there's about 600 that go on sale. And slight to my surprise, and we've had an upsurge in purchases this last 2 or 3 editions. I wish it had something to do with me, but it doesn't. But we literally get just 1 or 2 returns now, so you can see it's about 800.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Really, bearing in mind the population of the island's only 2,000. But there we are.
Absolutely. But I think, Tony, because there's no other, apart from the increasingly discredited social media, organs, there's very little other way to get the news out here.
Yeah. I mean, the only problem, of course, is the fact it's published fortnightly. So
Correct.
from that point of view, some news is very old news by the time it's actually published. But there you are. I mean, that's it, isn't it?
That's it. I think it would be too much of a strain on resources to get something out weekly. No, I think I know you're coming to. If we move to also an online edition, I'm not saying we get rid of the paper, but if we move to an online edition, then I think perhaps a weekly, even if it's just an update, might be feasible.
Yeah, an update between publications.
Exactly.
Just what's happening, which of course is what Guernsey Press are doing, and Bailiwick and everybody else at the present time. There we are.
Right.
So that's something that you're actually thinking about and will hopefully implement.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to mention cartoons. They're good, aren't they?
Well, yes. It's from someone called Scribbler. We have no idea who.
Any relation to Spartacus?
I don't think so. I don't think Spartacus can draw, frankly. But anyway, but no, they come in unsolicited, and someone said to me they're almost as good as, say, the Matt cartoon.
Yeah.
And they are. Yeah. They are very good. They're unsolicited. I assume Scribbler will do something for all 10 states members, and I think hopefully someone might buy up all 10 originals. If I were a states member, I'd buy up mine and put it in the laboratory.
Absolute fun. So we're talking about a paper Banksy here, aren't we? Really?
Exactly right. It
now,
slipped the door late at night.
Now, there have been cases in the past where libel has cropped up.
Yes.
No
Yes.
libel law on Alderney, but
No.
a situation where if it's read in the UK,
Yeah,
that's a different
yeah,
matter.
yeah, yes. I mean, without going into the details, there was a situation back in, I think, 2008, 2009, where a former States member was going to sue for defamation, and in the UK, because, as you rightly say, defamation law isn't very well developed in the Channel Islands, and a settlement was reached. I suppose the moral is, if in doubt, leave it out.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And I mean, presumably, despite the fact that you're not the editor, you'll have a look at each edition before it goes out just to make sure you're happy.
I do. I mean, there is a sort of de facto editorial board, which is Mort Birch, Francis Simonet, with David, what's his name? Oh, yeah, David Nash.
David Nash,
David Nash, I'm getting to see now. David Nash doing the proofing. So it's a de facto board.
Yeah.
I do get sight of it. Yeah, there are, to be fair, there are one or two things that have come up. You get some rather hysterical letters which can't be published. And we had a curious incident recently of a Nigerian caring organization, quite seriously, with an agency in London, wanted to put an advert to set up here.
Wow.
Yes, we decided that that couldn't be paid because clearly they didn't have the credentials, and we didn't want to give them the appropriate outlet.
Nothing to do with the Duchess of Sussex.
Hopefully not. No. So you get some curious stuff that has to be left out.
Yeah, absolutely. But there we are. Okay, so that deals with the journal. Let's get on to a few Alderney matters. And the first one was the Alderney Electricity webinar featuring James Lancaster that we watched the other day.
Yes.
I thought James came over very well. And
I think he did it.
Presumably your report on that in the journal.
Yes, indeed. Yes, that will be reported.
And give the link.
Yes, indeed. Yes, no, that's absolutely essential, I think. It was James was, if you like, advertising the energy opportunities in and around Alderney to a much wider public. He has had quite a lot of questions and responses, and I assume he will drive that forward, Tony.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his success rate record in the past has been brilliant in terms of putting in a new grid,
Exactly.
updating and automating the power station. So, I'm a great fan of James Lancaster, and basically what he says, I believe, and, I'm quite keen to go along with it.
Yes. No, I mean, he's done a very good job since he's been here. It must be about 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah.
And I hope he continues in that role. And I think he's trod very successfully the eggshells of interaction with the states.
And basically what he's coming up with is renewable energy to be used up to a point, third wind, a third what's the other bit? Solar. See, we're both suffering from it today. Third solar and a third storage.
Yeah.
And, I think the key to all this isn't necessarily talking about decarbonisation. It's talking about Alderney energy security, which is far more important in my view.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of decarbonisation and so on, Alderney's but a grain of sand, frankly.
Yeah.
Obviously, if that can be accomplished, it's part of it, all well and good. But no, that is and should not be the primary driver or motive.
Mm-hmm. So the $64,000 question is: will the states embrace the project or put it on the shelf?
Well, I think events will ultimately push them to taking some action. Yes, of course they can delay and procrastinate, but events will drive it. I just hope they don't leave it too late and too long.
And the thing is that from what James has told me in the past, we've done a couple of interviews over the last 6 months or so, and that is that he hopes to get external funding for it. It's not
Yeah,
actually going to cost the taxpayer anything in the
no,
short
quite.
term. Obviously, we've got to pay for it in terms of the electricity
Yes,
bills, but
yes.
to my mind, it's there. It's got to be done.
He said, yeah, yes. I mean, I think the big challenge is not providing the accessibility to these forms of energy, but how many houses are effectively equipped to sort of plug in. I think a number of houses will have to spend money, or maybe there can be soft loans or grants or something like that for them to plug in, because the if you like, the state of the power in many homes leaves a lot to be desired,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah, yeah.
that is, to me, the biggest local challenge.
Yes, but as far as James is concerned, with solar and wind, he's just going to plug it into the grid. So,
Exactly
so
right.
it's not going to mean everyone's going to have solar panels or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that
yeah,
at this
yeah,
stage.
yeah, quite.
So that's interesting. But looking at it in overall terms, there's a lot to be said for Jersey, Guernsey, and Alderney to get together and have a unified plan to produce electricity.
Absolutely, and I suppose James has taken, if you like, a first step by bringing the chief executive of Guernsey Electricity onto the board of Alderney
Yeah.
Electricity as a non-exec director. So there's inevitably a lot of collaboration, possibly joint research, and so on. So I think that is valuable, but it does need all three islands to cooperate, and I think the biggest challenge is the how should I put it, the cultural parochialism
Yeah.
that each jurisdiction has. That's unfortunately deeply embedded in the DNA, and it obviously just it applies much
Robert,
wider than.
Robert, it's time to forget that civil war. When was it? 1600 and something?
Exactly. Yes, I mean they need to get into the real world, and
Yes.
parochialism will just hold them back and obstruct, and it is gesture politics,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, the harbour rehabilitation scheme, it costs £60,000 to report. How can they
Uh,
justify that?
Well, I think it can only be justified if, as or when an investor comes along, and they don't seem to. Then I don't see them on the horizon. I did notice in the cartoon investment was depicted as a snail.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think the other thing that does and will put investors off is the how should I put it, very erratic process of planning approval here. It's dated. It has politicians taking the lead. Whether or not they listen to advice or even take advice, I have no idea. It's very how should I put it? It's very spontaneous.
Yeah, and
And
emotional.
if I were an investor, I'd want some guarantee of a streamlined process for planning, and I think that is one of the biggest barriers to any investor coming here.
And continuing on the planning theme,
Yeah.
the appeals process is absolute nonsense, isn't it? Just to let some of our viewers know, because we are sort of nowadays watched in the States and other places, Canada. Our system here, you put in a planning application to the States of Alderney, they either agree or refuse. If they refuse, you appeal to the local court. The local court being good people who have absolutely zilch when it comes to planning
Correct.
policy.
Correct.
And we've seen a case recently, haven't we, where it went to the States of Alderney. Alderney court found in the state's favour.
Yep.
It then went to the Royal Court of Guernsey rather,
Yep.
who are the ultimate arbiters.
Yep.
And as far as they were concerned, they found it was okay and allowed it.
That's right. And I think the important thing is when such cases go to litigation, there is the precedents in Alderney and Guernsey are not strong legally, and if you look at the judgment, 80% of the precedents quoted by the judge were UK planning appeals, and planning law is much more developed in the UK and will inevitably be applied in the Channel Islands in absence of any contrary precedents. And that leads me to say that the planning process here should be carried out by I'll call it a planning commissioner. And probably someone from the UK, that they come from outside the Alderney Goldfish Bowl, if you like, and they come to hear planning applications of all but the most basic planning requests. And they will be familiar with the current state of planning law and in the UK, and in making their decisions would be very mindful of what litigation could do. And candidly, the state is just pouring away money in fees. I mean, the last case, the fees were awarded against the BDCC, the Planning Committee, both in the Court of Alderney and in the Royal Court in Guernsey. And I would estimate that both sets would come to over £50,000, a figure that candidly Alderney can little afford these days, and it has no litigation insurance. That was withdrawn some time ago when they lost a couple of cases. So they need to be very, very careful about what they're doing on these matters.
I would take a slightly different view to you in terms of how you actually make the thing work. Let them make the initial decision, but then refer it to a qualified planning inspector from the UK to make the final decision if it goes to appeal. Because if you work on your basis, who do you appeal to?
Well, you would still have the process of under the law of appealing to the court in Alderney, which if they were wise would immediately refer it to the Royal Court in Guernsey, and it would be litigated there. But as I said before, most of the planning legal precedents are UK precedents.
So if you took my route and you had somebody engaged in the UK who would act from time to time on planning appeals, you'd have a situation there where the person would have plenty of access to UK planning case law and could come up with hopefully the correct answer, and would be the final well, not court, but the final decision maker.
Yes.
Be a lot cheaper because you could do it by written representations rather than engaging lawyers.
Well, you could. That's true. But I mean, I am personally, I'm very uneasy with when you have politicians effectively taking the decisions, and I'm not sure of the extent or depth of advice they take, or whether they take it. That's my major concern, Tony.
I always like to bore people with references to Woking, and many years ago, I applied for a change of use, and it was at the time when the public started being able to go in to the meetings, and mine was the very last one on the agenda. And the planning officers said, yes, this is fine. And the councillor said, no.
Oh, dear. So
I had to go to appeal, won it. But I mean, this is what happens, of course, when unqualified people get involved. Now, it's good to note, Robert, that the states have halved the predicted loss. But where's the asphalt?
Well, quite. Yes. I mean, I suppose that is a situation where getting the projected bad news out first and then coming in with good news soothes the bad news that there is a deficit. Let me just leave it like that. It's I suppose spin really. They have their own spin unit now, and I suppose they come out with these things. So it comes as a pleasant surprise, but it's still a deficit, and it eats into the reserves.
And it doesn't include the staff employment, the pension scheme for the staff.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Which
no,
is quite substantial.
Quite substantial indeed. Yeah, yes, that's right. That's what you might call a quote off-balance sheet item. If only they had a balance sheet.
Yes, and that's something you've been banging on for a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to take the lead from Guernsey, I'm told, but Guernsey's struggling with that as well, and which is another reason why I think the Guernsey figures get oscillate a lot, and I know you've spoken to one or two deputies there about that, so I won't pursue that one.
And of course, it follows EU practice, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
In terms of never getting the accounts signed off.
Absolutely, and people forget last year.
Yeah. All they hope they do. Some don't.
Well, I suppose the crunch comes when the state's payments bounce, but hopefully it never gets to that stage.
Now let's get on to the state-owned airline Aurigny, based in Guernsey. Too many routes, not enough planes, and this morning they've cancelled out a whole load of the new routes because they can't provide the planes.
Yeah.
Don't you think it was over ambitious, wasn't it, to come up with all these new routes in the first place?
Well, it was, because I mean, yes, it'd be welcome to have new routes, but they should have checked the resources available to do that. And these issues on spares and other matters, they should have been in their purview when they plan these routes. So it doesn't look good, and I see there's been abject apologies from the chief executive. It's certainly I shall put it like this: it's not helped his reputation, and I don't think his reputation on rationalising the fleet and all the other things isn't coming to fruition.
They hope to get rid of the semi-derelict jet shortly, I understand. They've got 2 operational ATRs at the moment because the third one's out of action due to a very heavy landing at Guernsey Airport. That sort of knocked the undercarriage out. And they're now talking about wet leasing a Saab 34-seater.
Yeah, I mean, it's really scrambling around for whatever's available. And I'm also told, and this is only anecdotal, that the Dorniers have been deployed further afield than Guernsey and Southampton.
They have been seen in Nottingham, and I've seen a photograph of it. I think Nottingham is East Midlands, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
And there was a plan to take them into Gatwick. Well, I don't know how much the landing fee is in Gatwick, but I bet it's based, with a minimum flat rate of God knows how much.
Well, I mean, the ride to Southampton is perhaps the maximum I would tolerate with the Dorniers, but going to Nottingham, goodness me, I suppose you take your thermos flask and all that with you.
Well, you certainly don't get any onboard catering, that's for sure.
No, quite.
But there we are. I mean, you have to wonder where we fit into all this, because I have my doubts about the runway.
Yeah, well, you see, the chief executive was a big proponent of the runway. And it was being done to rationalise the fleet. But his reputation has certainly suffered some setbacks over the last 2 or 3 months, and so his credibility will perhaps not be what it was with those who vote on the project.
Very much so. Right, let's continue now and move to the United Kingdom.
Oh, yes.
Civil service union suing the government over the Rwanda plan. What's going on there?
I mean, this is really absolute nonsense. The civil service, and I hope the proposition is kicked out by the courts, because the civil service is not a separate organisation. It is there to serve the government of the day, People may personally have their own views, but the civil service is not there to take a political stance on anything, and that's certainly what they've done on this particular matter. It's outrageous in my view, and it shows that the civil service is not being, I think, as dare I say, as controlled or as managed by ministers as it was.
Yeah,
and that's also partly because ministers move every 6 months or so. There's never any durability. If you go back 20 or 30 years, whatever the political hue, there might be one, at most two ministerial changes during a 5-year session, but they come too much now. So the ministers never get a grasp of their brief. And I was reading, I suppose you'd call it a biography of Rory Stewart, not a man I particularly admire, I have to say, but he was in 4 junior and mid-tier ministerial jobs in a 3 or 4 year period, and it was he was dizzy with the change. He went into the room, the brief was there, everything was lined up, but he never had a chance to really get to grips with the fundamental issues.
Actually, he was the Grant Shapps.
Indeed,
time,
yeah,
really.
Yeah, well, yes, we got Grant Shapps now. I think
he was Home Secretary for 5 minutes under trust, wasn't he?
That's right. He's Minister of Defence now. I mean, I think I know more about defence than he does. Anyway, there we are.
Royal Mail takeover. How do you feel about a Czech taking over? Hopefully, he's got a big checkbook.
Well, I think he's got. I wouldn't worry about the funding, but I think the big issue is that I wonder whether it can be called the Royal Mail any longer.
Yeah,
it effectively goes into private enterprise, and they have to the government has to retain what I call a golden share.
Yeah,
in the organisation, in the event that undertakings are not carried out, and we have a number of instances where undertakings have been given and not follow through, and you might cite some of the water companies in that context, but that's a bigger topic of discussion.
But the thing is, Robert, you could easily sort of compare the situation with Royal Mail to the electricity providers in the UK. EDF, yes. Big player, French.
Yep.
Aon, big player, German.
Yes.
It seems that we've lost control of a whole load of things.
Yes, I mean, we're like Wimbledon. We provide the turf, and all the star players come from abroad.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get on to the Pickles report. Lord Pickles' report being actually published today, and we are recording this interview on the 22nd of May for release on Friday. It seems to me that they've got the figures whittled down to between 641 and 1,027 deaths, and total number sent to the island during the war, something in the order of 7,000 people. That's totally different to what we've been told up to now by both camps.
That's right. I mean, obviously the figures are very tragic. They are best estimates based on whatever documentation they were given access to. I don't think that will be the end of the story, because I'd be interested to know whether additional archives from the UK archives are released or have been released for this. So I think academics, historians, and analysts will continue to pore over this from their own perspectives. He's done the job. I mean, some people will understandably say, well, some of his experts already had views on this, and they've had to, I assume, align their views with what the report ultimately says. And that's the one aspect of it. But sad though that is, the bigger issue is how the UK managed these issues at the end of the war. It's a UK issue in terms of what they did, how they did it, what they recorded, and what they released.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger issue. I listened very briefly. Lord Pickles on the Today programme a couple of hours ago, and I don't mean to say this flippantly, but there seemed to be a blame the Russians for the fact that people weren't prosecuted after the war. At that time, the US and the UK were doing a 180-degree turn towards Russia. The Cold War was starting, and immediate issues took precedent. But I think the more important is how the UK manages these sort of historical issues, and we've got that in other areas. We've had the blood contamination, we've got the post office, and so on. How does government manage itself and manage its records? And they haven't done a very good job historically. I think perhaps in the sense of the States of Alderney's publication of financial results, they should put the bad news out first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
give the good news later. But
I just can't with the blood issue. I just can't believe that Lord Clark could be so horrible about the whole thing. Always had a bit of respect for him. I don't have any more.
No. I mean, it was just pure bad judgment.
Yeah, but having said that, if you're really looking at it from a jaundiced point of view, you could say, oh, let's leave it for as long as we can, because hopefully a load of those people will have died.
Well, that's right. But as I say, I'm afraid my personal view is always get the bad news out immediately, because the media won't continue focusing on that, and then come out with the more ameliorating points later, because otherwise the media will just latch onto it. And coming back to the Alderney heritage, the media have latched onto it, and international, and I don't think they will let go. This will be subject to much more reflective examination by both specialist media and the general media over the next few years.
General election. Few views from you on that, because we only got a couple of minutes left. But I suppose on the plus side, inflation today 2.3%, but that doesn't take into account the fact lots of people are having to pay very high interest rates on their mortgage.
It doesn't. I mean, I come back to an interview I did with you some 4 or 5 months ago, where I predicted the date of the general election will be the third Thursday in November.
Yeah, we didn't have a bet on it.
No, but I stick to that because the reduction in inflation will take a long time to feed through to people's housekeeping and pockets. So that's headline. It's interesting from a macro point of view, but it's not the end of the story. So the general election prospects for the Conservatives don't look good.
No. But equally, what are the other lot going to offer?
Well, yes. I mean, I think some people will hold their nose and vote for them. Yeah. But I think we'll have as I view things currently, we'll have a very low turnout, possibly under 50% in the UK, which is not good for politics or democracy, frankly.
But people are so fed up with, all of the lies that are told and general, politicking.
Yeah. Well, there's a trust. There's a lack of, increasing mistrust in the different states and jurisdictions and their institutions, and it's growing. And it's certainly people just put their heads down. I mean, just briefly, 2 or 3 people said to me when I became chair of the journal, "Why don't you just leave the states out of it totally?"
No more cartoons. Can't have that. But
absolutely.
Coming down, though, to the way in which people are behaving these days, that attack on Robert Fico, the Slovakian Prime Minister, the other day, that's not good, is it?
Well, it isn't. And I mean, the 2 concerns me. One is I see a fragmentation in Europe over its stance on Ukraine, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that already. And that isn't that plays to whatever strengths Putin has, and I think it also shows that there are a lot of very very hot-headed people around. You know, the First World War started with a hot-headed person, didn't they? Who shot the Archduke? And
Well, this is the worry, isn't it?
yeah, I hope we're not heading for that. But no, it's a tragic act, but it's also darkly symbolic. I'm afraid, darkly symbolic.
We've run out of time. Once again, hearty congratulations on your appointment.
Well, thank you very much.
And perhaps some of our overseas listeners will want to read the journal online. Who knows?
Well, absolutely.
It's not going to be free, though, is it?
It's not going to be free.
Be a subscription.
It obviously be some reduced basis, but yes, it's important to get it online to get the outreach.
Absolutely.
Who knows, the international media, having been this appetite stimulated by the Pickles report, and so may actually subscribe to the journal if it's online. Who knows?
It'd be a jolly good idea. Robert, a pleasure as ever. Many, many thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much then, Tony.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Let's